So a little warm out here these days, but we're surviving. And luckily early fires, but nothing immediately here so far. So I'm happy. So I wanted to start. This is from Kenshu Ken Rinpoche, and it's kind of something that Sogyal Rinpoche used to use that I'd like. Just it's a simple poem. Rest in natural great peace. This exhausted mind, beaten helplessly by karma and neurotic thoughts, like the relentless fury of the pounding waves in the infinite ocean of samsara. Rest in natural great peace, this exhausted mind, beaten helplessly by karma and neurotic thoughts, like the relentless fury of the pounding waves in the infinite ocean of samsara. So I thought tonight I would play with this word, which, you know, I think back in the 60s, I had an idea of the word karma, but I didn't really get the full implication of it and how, I don't know, it's also, to understand karma, it's also, for me, a relief that somehow there is kind of an order to how things appear and disappear. And I think sometimes, you know, we can use it as a kind of a blame game, which I'm sorry that that's been used that way. You know, someone gets sick and they go, "Oh, it's my karma." Well, you know, one of the things the Buddha tried to explain about karma was it was not a simple thing. It was a very complex kind of mathematical equation that, you know, even though it was kind of explained as that everything is due to it, it also is different. There's a different time for all of it, you know. So we've all committed all sorts of acts forever, you know, from time immemorial. And many of them haven't been great, and many of them have been great. So it is this kind of mathematical soup that we're in. And one of the descriptions that the Buddha kind of gave was, and this really has to do with why karma is important to really understand, is because it is, in a sense, giving us, you know, it's not out of, this didn't come out of nowhere. This came out of many acts and intentions, and we are a product of those. And so sometimes, you know, I know this has been, I've done something I thought was really good for someone, and it turned out not so great, you know. And other times I did something that was not so great, and it turned out great. So, you know, this is the thing. So how is that happening? You know, well, this is the thing about time. It's unknown, you know. And what we can learn from karma is that, yes, we have to accept, you know, like in one of the things that used to a little bit bother me, it was in the Hindu tradition of that somehow, you know, and particularly the caste system, that somehow you were kind of born into who you would become, just simply because of the kind of the situation around you, family, all that stuff. And I think of it differently in the sense of, yes, there is, first of all, we're working with this. So there is intentional and unintentional. And the Buddha was very clear about this particular concept, because intention is when there is the consciousness to say, I know what I'm doing. And so that is, and more we become awake and aware, more we begin to see that our actions and our words have consequences. And so we realize we have to be very, this is the thing, you have to be very careful, because sometimes words can have more power than we know from history, than create actions. And so we have to be so careful. And part of our whole process here is how do we become more and more sensitive to the consequences of our words and our actions. That's really the bottom line. And how we use our bodies. I will add that as a third piece. So it's funny, and a lot of times in Asia, I come up against this about this, and I don't really want to go too much into it, but there's something they use there, particularly in the temples and stuff, and it's a thing called merit, and so in their go to heaven or something, but it's really the Buddha called that was false, because in some sense, not that it isn't a good deed, it's the fact that the mind behind it was a mind of greed, not a mind of compassion and freedom, So giving is great when it's done that way, when it's done with looking for consequences. I give you this and you're supposed to give me this back. It gets a little messy, so we have to look at these things, and one of the kind of classical pieces here is that I think I always go back to this because this kind of goes back to the Beatles, the 60s, and the kind of the Western use of the word karma, which was falsely understood, because karma is really what we're doing right now. Well, you're sitting here, you're listening, and in some sense, it may be light, but you are, in a sense, just through your intention of coming to sit with a community of Dharma practitioners, there is karma to that, and it's simply an action. There's also a word vipaka, which simply translates as result, which is different than the action we do right now. And that is really the energetics of the past, that sometimes the Buddha explained vipaka in a way that was, to me, probably the most interesting, was the fact that you could, and he described it as a glass of water and the Ganges, and you could take a teaspoon of salt, which is the same action, good or bad, and you could pour that into the glass and it would be extremely bitter, right? But you could take that same spoon and you could pour it into the Ganges and it wouldn't change the taste at all. And so in a way, this is where it gets a little complex, because it says that there isn't, the instant karma, there's an immediate results for a lot of the actions, because they're so complex, they're built into so many other things that, in some ways we have to see that there's intention, and that we work with that intention, and we know that there will be the vipaka, the result of that action. Didn't say when or how, but by understanding it, then there is a sense of, oh, now I get a sense, and I didn't get this at first when I first got this, it's really where the world of ethics, as the world we live in, which is how we relate to each other, in the sense of, the 5 precepts are so simple in some ways, and yet to truly understand them in the sense of their capacity for our, it's really is, they're there. Not to kill or lie or steal or harm others through our greed or sexuality or whatever, and to be really careful with our words, and also, careful with using intoxicants in a way that create a kind of, mischief, I would say, because again, people get a little, mind benders. And so we have to be careful. These precepts are there to keep us safe, but to keep our society safe, and so, part of our commitment is to create the speech and the action, and with our bodies, that support the ultimate safety of our community. The web that is created here, even though the Buddha says you can't take one thing out to find out how something happened, he said you can't really do that, because it's such a complex web of situations. So you can't take one thing out and say, oh, that's why. And he was quite strong about that. He said, if you really try to see why a certain thing happened, if you try to follow it back to its source, it will unhinge your mind. That was his comment. It's not something that you can, say, well, that's why that happened. It may be a piece of it, but it's not the whole. Everything is there are too many factors in one vipaka, one result, but our job is pretty simple, in some ways, because of those precepts, because I hope that what this is basically doing is cultivating not only a clear mind, but a good heart. And so ultimately, when we come to a place where, what are you going to trust? And my comment would be, oh, if you can listen to your heart, then your actions and your speech and your body will, in a sense, it's almost like there's already a knowing that's part of you that then comes to the foreground in its ultimate. But when there's anger or fear or jealousy or any negative state, then it's kind of, it can be quite disconcerting, and possibly causing ourselves or others harm. And that's what we really are trying to do as a community, is find this middle place that is not something about, it's really the wheel of life, that the spinning of this greed, hatred, and delusion, which human beings are so susceptible. They're susceptible to. And it's why we come to these teachings as a primary, as a discipline, to kind of know how to keep ourselves on track, and then to actually live it. You can get all the teachings you want, but you have to be able to find a way to live a moment. And I also think that in that process, what is it that I use that language? Shit happens. There is certain circumstances where, whether it's personal or it's a collective, and it happens, and I think, one of the lovely things, I love living in California, and I also realize, there's a lot of karmic stuff that's here, that's may come to fruition. I mean, I think I live right over the Yuba River Canyon, and I look over that canyon and I see 105 degrees out there, and I go, whoa, this is sitting on top of a tinderbox, and yet ultimately we're always sitting on top of a tinderbox, we just don't know it, and so in a way to be aware of that and to realize, oh, what would I do if I knew how precarious my situation in my life was? How precarious would that be? I would act differently. I would realize that, I am connected to everything and everybody. And it's true, like, I have a little bear down here. So he's so cute. Oh my gosh. He's a little guy. I don't know where his mom and dad are, but he just and he comes up and he's just a lovely creature. And I have a kind of fox that runs by and stuff. And it makes me really happy, that we're not the sole creatures here. We are part of an ecosystem, and that in that ecosystem, we have been so, abusive to use it the way we want it. And that's what we've done on some level. And at the same time, we're all visitors, and it's one of the things I loved about being on the road sometimes. I remember in Thailand one year, in Burma, where I would never stay any place more than 5 days because people would get to know me. And I realized then I suddenly would get involved with these people. So I just said, no, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to learn how to keep letting go. And I have to let go of people. And, I met great people, really fun and stuff. But I realized that my purpose was deeper than just, being there and hanging out, but actually was a movement that had to happen that I didn't actually maybe recognize, And it was very enlightening because a lot of the early monastic system was based on one of them was never staying, a monk would never stay in one place over 5 days, and then he would move on. And it was really because as soon as you're there for a little while, what's the instinct? You attach, to things or people or place, and what is the teachings? Oh, always learning. It's just like that sitting. It's that river that's constantly flowing, and yet, we get so, I love that word, bamboozled by some of the flashy stuff in the river that's floating by, and we either want to keep it or attach to it or do something. And this was really one of those cases where I really was determined that I had to use that particular technique, which I don't necessarily advise, especially in these times, since you're grounded. and that's I've been trying to figure out how to get out of here. I don't think I've ever been this long in one place for years, maybe ever. I don't know. So the pandemic is a great teacher in a different way, but it was also that teacher of moving every 5 days for several months. I did that, and there towards the end of it, I started to see how, first of all, how I like people and I get attached in places and things, and how easy it was also to let go, but it took a little while, and I think for my psyche, it was actually a good thing. It's also been good thing here, kind of being in this one, this kind of one world here of the pandemic, where people have been grounded, and I'm happy to say that, you know, there's some loosening up of that, and I know it's going to end. And I don't know when, but I know it's going to end. And I don't know what people will do. Will they learn something and use something from this? I'm sure kids would. I don't know about, you know, I don't know about older folk. They may not take it the same way, but young people, this has really been, you know, whether it's graduating from high school to whatever, this has been a complete, you know, it could be fortunate, and or it could be very disturbing. And I'm hoping it's really fortunate, you know, that it gave people a chance to, you know, look inside, and maybe they could see that what I was doing by moving every 5 days, sometimes not 4 days, 5 days, whatever it was, that that how attached, and how can we learn to, you know, soften and let go a little more. And I think that's probably the most fundamental teachings that are available to us. You know, the Buddha, he had, thinking of karma, he said there were 4 unthinkables that were something you just didn't dwell on, you know. And the first one, you know, was the origin of the universe, that somehow that in all kind of cultures, one of the things is that we have created these origin stories to in a sense, to identify to our sometimes our lineage or heritage or religion or ethnicity, you know, which is all fine. But he said, don't, you know, don't rely on that, that it may be bigger and more mysterious than we could ever imagine, you know. So don't dwell on the kind of the origins of the universe. And the second one he said is, don't dwell on karma. You know, you don't know how, you don't know the complexity of how any one situation happens. And I'm happy to say, you know, one of the lovely things about, at least for my life, has been the Dharma, is I cannot tell you how this all happened, you know, even how you're here tonight. I have no idea. And I know when I was young, I was pulled in some I think it was unconscious way. But it also says that, which I believe of you, by the way, every one of you here, you have touched the Dharma before. This is not something new to you. This is something that has been kind of working through your life, maybe in totally different circumstances. But here we are with this, you know, sense of that there's a, you know, you could say, oh, it's just a mystery. Yes, it's a mystery. And there are the vipaka, there are results from past deeds and intentions. And I always think, oh, well, I'm not actually hanging out with strangers. I'm actually hanging out with people that have hung out with me. I don't know how long. And I know that what's behind that is that there is this, you know, the kind of that their karmic consequences means that somehow we're all in this process of trying to go from, you know, maybe you can say sometimes it's suffering, sometimes it's confusion, sometimes it's just curiosity, sometimes it's just interest, but we're all headed towards, in a sense, we're looking for, you know, you can say awakening on one side, but you can also say, which I hope you all agree with, because it's kind of important intention, and that there's also the fact that you're uh, on this path for some sense of wonder or solace or good heart that is in the process of manifesting through your practice and your intention, you know. Now, I was going to finish these because there's 4 of them. And the next one is, it's just talked about is that here's the thing about this thing called Buddha. And Buddha, you can say, is just, let's use the language of awakened, that there is an awakened being. And an awakened being we from where we're sitting, we have no understanding of what they know, you know. So in a way, when there's a Buddha, there's this, it's like this mystery into how the whole thing works. And we're only these little things that see a little bit of, a little slice of what that is. And that, you know, through practice, and I have to use the word, it's faith, which is something that, you know, is simply because things have been confirmed to us through sitting, through hopefully positive experiences, that somehow you know that this awakening or this Dharma path is something that, you know, has been held for 2,600 years. You know, it has been something that has inspired people over and over. And one of the beauties of, you know, I was thinking of all the different kind of monasteries and stuff I've been at, the wonderful faith that people have and the cultures they've created around it, you know, and that their capacity and I mean, I love kind of the Asian, their simplicity towards the Dharma. It's not something so complex. You know, some of the teachings are complex. I won't kind of brush that off. But at the same time, this is simply about how is it that you know what your next step is going to be? You know, do you have to have a psychic tell you, or can you actually kind of trust that that internal compass or language that has been there all the time and has probably been there moving you along, but there was part of you that believed somehow somebody knew something more than you did. And I'm here to counteract that, say, no, you're the one who knows. And that there is the nature is that we have all this world that is so complex and is constantly in flux. And yet there is someone, and it's a kind of an odd thing to say, someone in you or that knows who you are, you know. And the question here is this whole practice and path is becoming who you are, you know. And it has certain particular qualities. It has the quality of fearlessness, you know. We're extremely fearful creatures, but the more we practice, that fear is, you know, I wouldn't say it's suppressed, but I'm saying it's, in some ways, it's like in the river, fear is just like a contraction that moves through. And you can either jump on that train of association and get all caught up and end up, you know, not sleeping for days or whatever, or you can simply see it and feel it. And this, the part of the art here is to feel that fear, to feel the fear and the becoming at the same time, if that makes sense to you, to feel the fear and the becoming at the same time, because it has something, it has a message for you. And if you're just going to fight it, you're just going to go downriver probably. But there is a possibility of kind of connecting with it and realizing that they're, you know, maybe, you know, it doesn't have to be a natural phenomena like a bear coming at you, a rattlesnake or something like that, which is natural, instinctual, but it's the psychological part that, you know, that we get caught by, and that we have to somehow learn to you know, it's mitigated, because a lot of times when we don't do that, then you know, what is it? We either attack or we run or or freeze, you know, a flight, fright, freeze response. And part of this is learning to mitigate that. So it happens and it's there, but you know, it's almost like part of what I know of what I do is that the instinctual thing is to clamp down on it. You know, it's like, then I can control it and know it. And this is counterintuitive. That's really what the practice is. As there is, instead of clamping down on it, you step back from it. You know, you sort of give it space. So then suddenly the context is different. And yet the emotional reactivity is the same. And yet one is goes into another kind of situation, and sometimes not so good. And, you know, we get angry, or we walk out, or we run, we do something. The other, we don't do anything. You know, we sit there and go, wow, that was interesting. You know, and every time that, this is the other thing about the kind of counterintuitive part of this, that instead of reacting and kind of jumping on that train of reactivity, and we don't do that, every time we do that, we get more confident in something that's kind of holding everything, you know, and that reactivity then, even though it may, situations may bring it up again and again, which it does, because that's life. It's here to teach us something. That as that happens, then every time we kind of, instead of jump on the train of association, we jump back from it. And then there is this, you know, that's the thing I keep trying to point out, I'll always keep pointing at, is that there is, it's just sort of like saying, like, here's the sky, clouds go through it. If I get all caught up in the clouds, it just makes a mess, you know? But if I don't, then that ability to step back from that and not try to fight with it, that there gets to be a confidence that suddenly, oh, you know, it's the same blue sky. It's always been there. That is our natural awareness, you know, and it kind of holds everything, but and there's such a sense of relaxation or ease in the in that in itself. And yet, when we get caught, we totally forget. It's like there is no blue sky. There is just the reactivity that then a lot of times we feel not so great about later, you know. But if you actually get that panoramic awareness, you know, is available to you, then there is, you know, there is this possibility of suddenly going from, you know, of sometimes a very sticky situation into a kind of a wider situation. One of the things, well, the magic I've found is when I've actually learned to do some of this, the changes actually, if other people are kind of, I mean, you know, not everybody, people get bent out of shape with me, just like everybody gets bent out of shape with everybody. And yet, when I know I've kind of pulled back and kind of rested more in that place, it actually, they change too. It's like suddenly they're not the same, you know. even if they were, wanting something or greedy. And it doesn't always work. Nothing does. But I've seen it work, where people actually, maybe their frustration or their anger or whatever, it just simply dissipates. But it's not because of anything I said. It's the perception of what I was experiencing. So I was not experiencing it as fear, which then that's usually what it is. Fear that then turns to anger or control or some means of sometimes changing what's there instead of like, oh, no, this, and a lot of times I find if I can do that, then I can see it's not about me, which is the first thing I do is I identify the fear, the anger, or the greed, or the possessiveness, or whatever, towards me. If I don't do that, then suddenly, I'm looking at the dharma of it, not the reactivity of it. And that's what, I really feel is possible. And if we could all learn this, the world would be a much better place. And not only that, there's one other kudo here, is that when we step back into this, it's really, you could use the word big mind, which is Suzuki Roshi would use, or small mind, which is what we're talking about. Big mind, you step back into big mind, which is much more panoramic. If it's been an attack from someone or some fear from someone, there's actually a sense of, you get that they're suffering. There's some kind of fear, anger that's caught them, and they are caught in it. And that, and then there's more of, on your side, there's more of a sense of, there's the word tolerance, which means you tolerate their contraction in the river of flow of things. But also, there's also the unleashing of empathy, that, you have compassion because you can feel and see that they are contracted, And mostly we just identify and get caught up in it, It's they're big differences, And it's really why, in some ways, the practice to me is yes, it's great to learn to follow your breath, do the mantras, visualizations, whatever you do, it's fine, because those are all mind trainings. And they're necessary so that at some point you can turn back to, you could say, the natural awareness or open awareness, or that isn't caught, that you can turn back to that and realize that, everything was in that. The rest was, more and more complicated, especially with, vendettas and, oh boy, we are something, aren't we? So anyway, I'm talking, but I hope that there's some of this that you're getting, that you have choice in this, and that when you have choice, then maybe the contraction isn't what, and the reaction and the defense and the sense of me and mine and I is maybe not the best means. And this other is stepping sort of out of the fire, and I'm saying it's something you have to learn. It's not something, but it comes from this practice, and I know for myself, it's true. I had a very hard father who, even right up to I remember my stepmom saying, "I'm sorry your dad never met you." And I was 40 something by then, before he died and stuff, but the fact was he was so caught in his own stuff he didn't see me. But he also taught me a lot because I was able to use that material, you know, which I think you all have material out there, you know, that you've been dealing with, and hopefully with this, the way the kind of the contraction, it didn't work. You know, it just created more confusion, more sometimes, you know, anger or fear or greed or comparing mind. What a mess, you know. A comparing mind is just way overrated. You know, I know we're trained in that, but you know, this is saying maybe you don't need to use that so much. Comparing mind becomes, you know, a way that we classify, but it's also a way that we create our reactions and beliefs and views about everything. So I don't know. I'm just talking away here. I think I'm kind of coming to time here. I was going to do some questions, but you can answer yourself, you know. And me, I'm just going to babble, and hopefully, I always think that, you know, sometimes kind of like stream of consciousness, some of it's going to be something you understand and some of it isn't. That's okay. I don't care. You know, what I care about is that there's a piece of it that my truth is I'm kind of throwing on the table. And you know, ultimately it is care for yourself, that kind of holds everything. You know, this is a marvelous mystery we're in, and we forget, you know, and the other thing, I just feel life is so precious. You know, it's like, wow, I woke up this morning, not great, but at least I woke up, you know, and I'm grateful that I'm still kicking. I didn't make it. I was supposed to be in Thailand by now, but you guys got stuck with me. So what now? You know, and that's okay. You know. So I think kind of the last piece, and this is really about thoughts, speech, and actions. And one of the descriptions one of my teachers gave, it's like, if you're down at the seashore, and it's really a lot about sitting by the river, but this is a seashore, that the waves come up and you write things in the sand. And if it's just in your head, then the wave will come and wash it away. That's a thought. Then there is, you know, past where the high tide or whatever comes, and there we go and we, you know, we carve something into a rock or a tree or whatever, and you have to wait for a big storm to come and wash it away. And that's like our words, you know. And then you can go a little higher up on the cliff there and carve something into the rock, which is actions. And so, you know, we have to be, this is the thing, be careful, you know, be careful with your actions, be careful with your words, and your thoughts. Sorry, they're just things that in the waves, and when we attach to them and makes things out of them in speech or action, then we have to really check in our heart to see, is that okay? Is that true? You know, is there some sense of awakening there, or kindness that we can somehow use? So let's just take a moment. I want to close here with a little metta. And I was going to say, thank goodness that we had such little difficulties here about internet, and this amazing thing you can do this. So I'm just grateful, and it worked out tonight. You're here, I'm here. So just take a moment and bring your attention to your heart. You know, life is complicated, and we are reactive creatures of, you know, it's kind of like defend the I, the me, the mind, the self. And somehow people disappoint us. I mean, people harm us, betray us, all that stuff. And yet here we are. And so we recognize the complexity, and we also have this truth that under all of the things that our life has been, there is this good heart, and that we can bring attention to it, and you know, have this intention, this wish. And of course, I like these are my phrases. Uh, May I live with an open heart. May I live with an open heart. May whatever covers my heart be dissolved. May whatever covers my heart be dissolved. And just to sit in some way, to sit in your own gentleness, your own kindness, your own fearlessness. And just recognize that, you know, it's not indulging yourself, but caring for yourself, you know, so that there is a sense of balance and equanimity, and a sense of compassion, and fundamental joy for the privilege of being here, being alive. And that we also have the power to, as we hold ourselves, first just to all of us on this Zoom thing tonight, that may you be healthy. May you be free from any or inner outer harm. May you find ease of being. And as we hold the community that we're with here now tonight, then we can extend it out to others, that that we wish that beings, first of all, beings, you know, that they may learn not to harm each other and support each other, to support the nature, the trees and the grasses and the creatures, and the simple ecology of our planet. And that we have this wish that, you know, whatever we do together, that the power of that goes out to beings everywhere, that they may benefit from our practice and our time together, and that the clear mind and the good heart keep manifesting through our bodies. May all beings everywhere be happy.
Thank you, John. Good evening.